Hey guys, welcome back to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with the patch 6.0 D rundown, and this one's a little bit, or quite a little bit later than usual. It's been quite a number of hours since this patch came out already, and we haven't been able to do the video because we've been a little bit busy today, but we finally got around to it, so hopefully it's not too late and you guys can still find out what's going on with the patch from this video itself. So firstly, we're going to have a new champion, Poppy. Now, Poppy is a champion who is kind of like a bruiser slash tank, and the most unique thing about her is that she has a spell that kind of prevents people from dashing. So if you try to dash when you're inside her circle, you will get cancelled by the circle, which is, of course, a very interesting mechanic. Traditionally, she is played in the top lane, the jungle, and sometimes the support position. So we'll see in Wild Rift where she finds play. But unfortunately, she'll only be out at the end of the month and not immediately when the patch releases. So that's about, I believe, 2 more weeks before she actually releases. Now, the new Wild Pass with Lulu is actually live right now with, of course, Star Guardian Lulu, or Pajama Guardian Lulu, I think it is. Also, there is the Wild Pass Sprint event, which is also live right now. And with Poppy's release, you will get Poppy's Challenge releasing, as well as Poppy's April Fool Mischief releasing. And then we have ARAM and Arena final seasons. Now, they have actually clarified this on Twitter, where it's not good. The game is not actually going to go away, but it's just that they're going to revamp the way that the seasons work in ARAM and in Arena. So I believe both of them are live right now. I think ARAM is live right now and Arena is going to begin tomorrow, I guess. But basically, essentially, they're both kind of going to be live. And yeah, and after that, they're going to change the system. So if you guys enjoy that, go ahead. Hextech ARAM is also being extended until April the 16th. It was supposed to be only until today, but they extended it by basically a month. I think that it's been getting a lot of playtime because whenever I queue for it, matchmaking is pretty much instant. So I think a lot of people are playing Hextech ARAM, and because of the popularity, they are going to extend it. So first champion change we have is Corki. Now, Corki is actually getting a buff. So first up, his attack speed per level is going up from 0.022 to 0.032. Now, I don't think that's gonna matter at all. Like we're into the decimal points here. Like, it's going from 0.02 to 0.03. Like, in decimal points here, I don't really think that matters very much if my math is correct, which it may not be. And the AD per level is going up from 3 to 3.5. So people have actually pointed this out online, but if we actually take a look over here at patch notes 6.0c and the Corki rework, which is over here, they actually said they lowered it from 4 to 3.5. And now they're changing it from 3 to 3.5. So something doesn't quite tally here. So basically, they're making it appear as if Corki got buffed, but in reality, that's what he was supposed to be anyway, because he was always supposed to be 3.5, but apparently they actually mysteriously nerfed it to 3, and now it's going back to 3.5, which is what it was supposed to be anyway, so it's a little bit confusing, that one. But other than that, the missile recharge time for the big one's going down from 20 seconds to 16 seconds. Great buff. Like, the cooldown on his ulti is just way too long. And the auto attacks against champions reducing the charge time is increasing as well to be 300% the crit rate instead of 200%. So basically, the cooldown on his ulti is getting lower. I think this is a really good buff because the cooldown on his ulti simply is too long. I honestly still think he's in a really good spot in terms of damage wise. Although apparently they don't agree, they being Riot. But I actually think that he's in a decent spot right now. He's not that insane, but he's not that horrible either. I think he's a decent, like maybe somewhere in the S or A plus tier probably. I don't think he's pretty good, so this should help him out even more. Now, Annie is getting a buff as well. Like, the first couple of like champions are all getting buffs, so the mana consumption on her Q is going down, and the damage, or rather not the damage, but the AP ratio and a little bit of the base damage is going up as well. So overall, more damage for Annie. The shield, the movement speed is going up by a little bit. Now, Annie kind of doesn't really have a very good place in the meta right now, even after they gave her that mini rework on the ulti, because there are kind of just a lot of other better options, right? Unlike PC, where one of the reasons why Annie is so good is because her Q is point and click and you can't miss it. But their issue is that in Wild Rift, her Q is a skill shot that you can miss. And if that's the thing they take away, then there is really a lot of other champions that would just be simpler to play than Annie, because Annie's like really short range and not really that easy to play because she doesn't have that point and click spell that she has in PC. So I don't think this will change too much. It's not gonna make her broken or anything, so probably her player is gonna stay about the same. Now, Lucian, AD per level is going up from 4 to 4.5, and the cooldown on his E is going down by a decent amount in the earlier ranks, but it's basically going to remain the same at the highest rank. I actually also think Lucian is in a really decent spot right now. I don't think he's weak at all, but apparently the stats must say otherwise because they've given him a nice number of buffs. Like 80 per level buff is pretty nice, and cooldown buff on his E is also pretty nice. So he must not be doing that well. Now Ezreal, another ADC getting a buff. Base move speed going up by 5. Very small, but perhaps could be impactful change because move speed is always an important stat. His Q-AD ratio is going up by 10%, and Ezreal is getting huge buff this patch because extra 10% AD ratio plus a change we'll see a little bit later on is going to make Ezreal a lot better. Now, the thing about Ezreal is he doesn't actually build all that much AD, right? If you think about his build, Manamune doesn't give a lot of AD, Triforce doesn't give a lot of AD, Riftmaker doesn't give any AD, then we have like Bork, which doesn't give any AD either, so he really doesn't have a very AD heavy build, right? So on the surface, this 10% AD buff seems like a lot, but in reality it's kind of balanced around the fact that his items don't actually give him that much AD anyway, and you can't really go for like a Bloodthirster Ezreal or something. I mean, you could, but it's not that great, right? So maybe there could be a build like Manamune and Triforce into Bloodthirster. Maybe could be a build because the 50 to 60 plus AD you get from Bloodthirster is probably more than like 3 of your items combined. Like, it's more than Triforce plus Manamune plus Riftmaker combined, considering Riftmaker doesn't actually give any AD, so maybe that could be a possible build for Ezreal. We might test it out and show that in the video. But next we have Wukong. Now Wukong, his passive, the health regen is going from 1.5% to 2.5%. Definitely is going to help out a lot for Baron lane Wukong compared to jungle Wukong, and furthermore, his golden staff, which is the Q, which heals, mana consumption is going down by 10 at all ranks, and the cooldown is also going down, especially at the earlier rank. So again, this helps out a lot more for lane than jungle, because in jungle you have blue buff and the mana consumption really doesn't matter all that much, although the cooldown would be nice. And similarly, the Nimbus Strike, the mana consumption is going down to 40. So I think this is a huge buff to lane Wukong, which we actually don't see that much of, and we don't actually see Wukong all that much anyways, but it's normally you see him in the jungle instead of the lane, right? So overall, a really nice bunch of buffs to Wukong. Now Graves is the one getting the next buff. Base MR is going up by 2. 2 is of course a very small number, but it, of course, every little point counts, I guess. So his Q getting a cooldown reduction, which of course is the ability you max first, but for his early jungle clears, this will matter, and similarly 5% extra damage to monsters, again to help with a faster clear. Now his quick draw, which is the small dash you get, the armor per stack that you get is actually going up very significantly, especially at the earlier ranks, right? Because at one point it's +5, right? So it's +5, then +4, then +3, then +2. So really, this is a huge early game buff, right? Because extra 5 points, like 8 to 13 is a huge buff, right? So in the like earlier game fights, if you have your grit stacked up, especially if you fight at Skull and you have your grit stacked up, this is actually going to be very, very significant, because like you can stack up to 8 stacks of grit, and like getting an extra 5 is like an extra 40 armor, which is just insane if you really think about it. So this is a huge buff to Graves early game, and this actually could make Graves good. The only real issue is that stacking armor on true grit is not a very easy thing to do, right? Because after you do it on your first clear and you get to Skull with your full grit, after you clear Skull, there's nothing else for you to stack it on anymore. So this will of course help you in the later game fights when you have those long fights as well. But aside from the first clear and the first fight, this is actually not that, like, stacking true grit is not that easy, right? But this is of course still an amazing buff regardless of the fact. So Graves getting a pretty big buff as well. Now Mordekaiser, I believe we're finally getting into the nerfs now, if I'm not wrong. Actually, this is an adjustment, right? But we're slowly going from buffs to adjustments to nerfs. So the damage on his Q is going up slightly in terms of the base damage, but in terms of the AP scaling, it's actually going up by 10% as well. And here, of course, in compensation, the base amount is going down a little bit. And then the Death Realm cooldown is actually going up in terms of cooldown by 5 seconds. I think that's fine. I think that the compensation to his Q is enough to compensate for the alt nerf, so I think he's gonna be fine. And now here's where we get the nerfs, right? So first nerf is to Irelia. Now Irelia, her passive damage is going down in the early game from like 30 to 10 at level 1, but it's going up from 120 to 150 at the higher rank. So basically, She's a little bit too early game skewed at the moment. And yes, if you're a good Irelia, you will pretty much be very strong in the lane if you can combo correctly and things like that. So they are basically just making her weaker in the early game but stronger in the late game, so that she doesn't just crush her lane opponent and such, which I think is an okay kind of adjustment. But Irelia is really someone who wants to be strong in lane and wants to fight in lane. So I'm not an Irelia main, but not too sure how big this will affect her. And of course her Q, which is the bread and butter ability, is also copying a nerf. 5 damage at all ranks. Of course this matters a lot for rank 1 because 15 to 10 is huge, but whereas 105 to 100 is not that much, right? And 5% AD ratio decrease as well. And the health regen though is going down at the earlier ranks, but it's actually going up at the later ranks. So this is kind of the same situation as the Ionian Fervor, where they are nerfing her early game but buffing her late game. So I guess a little bit more of an adjustment as well. Now Echo finally gets a nerf. I've been feeling the Echo is really broken for the longest time. Damage to monsters is going down by a significant amount in terms of his passive. Now the funny thing is, they actually buffed this passive damage to monsters a couple of times way back when, and now they're kind of re-nerfing it, which is kind of the whole Riot's pattern of it, like buffing and nerfing, and then, the cycle continues, right? And then his W damage, the W has missing health damage in case you guys were unaware, but the percentage is going down by quite a significant amount as well on both accounts. And then the ulti is getting an extra cooldown on the first 2 ranks, but at the last rank it's still the same. So overall, a decent number of nerfs to Echo, I think, should pull him back in line a little bit. I think it's not the biggest nerfs because the passive damage on champions was not nerfed. But the biggest problem with him is the passive damage onto champions as well as the percent missing health damage onto champions. So they've covered one of it but not the other one. And also the ult damage on champions is also kind of insane, but that's kind of on you to not stand at his shadow. So that's kind of your fault if you get hit by it. But yeah, those are the 3 kind of big problems. Next up, Mbessa getting a nerf as well. So first nerf that she's getting is on her passive, which is of course the dashes and the damage. But of course they're not nerfing the dash, they're nerfing the damage. So the damage is going is the champion level scaling is going down by 1 instead of times 4, it's times 3. And the AD is also going down by a little bit. So overall a bit less damage on her passive. It matters, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. Q damage on monsters getting reduced from 110% to just 100%. So now no extra damage to monsters will hit her clear quite a bit for the jungle Mbessa. And of course her ulti, the health regen that she gets, is actually changing quite a bit. So the base amount is going up tremendously, but the AD scaling is actually getting reduced. So I'm not sure about the math on this because she does build items that give her quite a decent amount of AD. Like, depends on the build you go, right? Because if you go for like Triforce, Black Cleaver, Sterix kind of build, she doesn't get that much AD. But if you go for the Eclipse build, she does get a lot of AD. So I think it's going to be more worth it to go for a more tanky build now. But anyways, actually that wasn't even the change, right? I looked at it completely wrong. This is what it was. It's being changed to base amount is going lower, and then the bonus AD is going lower by 5% as well, and it's just everything's just getting nerfed accordingly. So in reality, forget what I said about the build, that doesn't really matter that much. But basically it's just a straight up health nerf in all aspects of the ulti. So yeah, so I'm also getting a pretty huge nerf. So now here is the other buff I was talking about in terms of Manamune. So Manamune is getting a pretty big buff. Now I'm not sure if this is the buff Corki, because Corki is a Manamune user, and pretty much the only Manamune users in the game are Corki and Ezreal. And maybe, Varus doesn't even build Manamune anymore, right? He normally goes for Essence Reaver. But anyways, basically Manamune charges faster. So instead of charging by 10 mana every time, it's now charging by 15 mana every time, which of course is going to charge a Manamune a lot faster, and it's going to help out the Manamune users to hit their mirror mana power spike a lot faster. So indirectly it's a buff to Ezreal and Corki, especially if Corki goes for the Manamune build. Now next up we have Stoneplate finally getting a nerf. I've said this in my videos. I actually think I said this in some of my unreleased videos. So if you guys hear that in one of my unreleased videos, it's because I recorded it before this patch. But the shield is going down from 14% of your max health to 10% of your max health, which I think is still quite a bit, but it's a very decent sized nerf. So thankfully they're finally getting that nerf. So Glorious Enchant, they're actually trying to get more people to buy it. So the range is going up by 50, and after you use the Glorious Enchant, you will not get the original 15% movement speed removed. Now I have no idea what that's about, because honestly no one builds this item, but basically just making it a little bit better. And funnily enough, Locket is getting nerfed. So the shield you get on Locket is getting reduced because of the fact that you have extra healing and shielding from Forbidden Idol and the support items that it builds into. I still think Locket is not that good because Locket's shield is really small in my opinion, but apparently it's a lot more better than I thought because they're actually nerfing Locket. And Magnetron is getting a new mechanic, which is when you use your Magnetron enchant, you will get 30% bonus move speed when you reach your target position, which, again, is not a very attractive option, same as Glorious. So I guess they're just trying to make the options a little bit more attractive. But I really, no matter how attractive you make these options, they're never going to be better than like QSS, Stasis, and Gargoyles, right? Those are basically the 3 top enchants in the game. Right, the only chance you can ever have of any of these enchants being better is if you make it so broken that it becomes better, and at that point it's not even going to be good for the game anymore, so that's probably not even a good thing. Empowerment is now getting a buff. Instead of 8%, it's now 9% extra damage, because obviously a lot of people like to prefer to take Conqueror or Lethal Tempo, especially for ADCs, so Empowerment just getting a little bit of a nice buff. Indirect Lucian buff, by the way. And then Cleanse a little bit too broken apparently, so cooldown is going up by 10 seconds, so now you have a 10-second longer cooldown than Ignite, Heal, and Barrier. And the immune CC duration is going down from 0.75 seconds to 0.25 seconds. So now the cleanse timing becomes very, very important, because you have to cleanse the moment you're hit by CC or the moment right before you're hit. If you cleanse too early, the room for error is now very, very small. So the kind of use cases where this is actually kind of important is, for example, if you have a Vi flying towards you, what I like to do is before Vi actually reaches me, I like to cleanse and use that 0.75 seconds that I'm immune to CC to then walk away from the vial. Now, if I try to do that and I mistime it, now I'm going to cleanse and then Vi is going to reach me, CC me, and then I'm going to be in trouble. So now what I have to do is maybe I have to cleanse when the Vi actually reaches me instead of beforehand. So that will make cleanse timing a lot more important, and this is a very big change, especially for the ADC role, where your room for error is a lot smaller. And final 2 system changes is on the Enchanted Ensemble, instead of doing 60% of the tower's max health, you're going to do only 50% of the tower's max health. So basically it's a nerf to the initial charge of the Herald. And then Baron, the damage reduction for empowered minions from enemy champions is going from 60% flat to 50 to 60%. So essentially the minions are going to be tankier, less tanky in the early game and tankier in the late game, because they're way too tanky in the early game. And Baron has gotten a bunch of hotfix nerfs as well between the C patch and the D patch, so there is also that. And there are arena changes and hex tank augment changes. I'm not going to really cover those. And there are going to be a couple of new skins. The Dragon Mancer skin should be out already, and Pizza Delivery Sivir is going to come out together with Poppy. But also, where is the Poppy release skin, by the way? But anyways, that's going to be all for this patch. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.